Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Lake Forest City Council, April 18th, 2017, to order. And we'll open with invocation.
Yes, our invocation is from Outreach Pastor Araceli Godoy from Faro Church, Lake Forest.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Hi.
And blessing us.
Yes, thank you for having us here. Let us pray. Lord, I just thank you first for this wonderful day and this time to come together to discuss our city's plans. I also just thank you for this wonderful Easter weekend that we just had, and I thank you for your sacrifice. I pray over today's opinions and ideas that are given. May we take the time to listen to one another, but I also pray over our council women and councilmen, Lord, and the city staff as they make decisions for our city, and just give them the gift of wisdom and knowledge as they make these plans. I thank you in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Let roll call show that all are present. And that brings us to the Pledge of Allegiance. If Councilman Andrew Hamilton, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That brings us to closed session. Do we have anything to report? City Attorney.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. There's one item. Pursuant to prior council direction, the city has filed an answer and cross-complaint in the case Lake Forest Community Association versus the City of Lake Forest, OCTA, and Southern California Regional Rail Authority. That is all for tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. That brings us to our student liaison, El Toro Charger. Is he here tonight?
Actually, as they're just coming back from spring break, there is no student liaison report tonight.
Okay. So at this time, we'll recess for the Housing Authority business to conduct. We'll bring to recess and then call back to order the Lake Forest City Council because of Housing Authority businesses. Do we have anything to report from closed session for Housing Authority?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Consent calendar for Housing Authority is item number 4. I think entertain motion. Does anybody from public speaking?
Public comment for housing is not on the special agenda.
Okay, great. Item number 4 for Housing Authority. I'll take
Move the minutes.
Okay. All in favor, please cast your votes.
That motion passes unanimously.
And I'll reconvene the Lake Forest City Council meeting. And it'll be presentations. I'll ask for a motion for presentations, please.
Move for presentation.
All in favor, please cast your votes.
That motion passes unanimously. Agenda item 4, proclamation declaring April 22nd, 2017 as Earth Day in the City of Lake Forest, submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Really 2 proclamations, both Earth Day and Arbor Day, 2 times to celebrate both the earth and the trees, and being Lake Forest. It's very appropriate that we do that. If anyone in the audience or the residents are interested, the Kiwanis Club is hosting an Earth Day event of planting trees and shrubs and helping to clean up Toronto Creek Park. And with that, we have, I believe, 2 proclamations.
Okay.
Yeah, you meet you at the front.
Just briefly, so what was the date and time of that, do you know? Just for the audience. I believe it's Saturday, this Saturday at 7:30.
Yes, at Toronto Creek Park.
Okay, Saturday, 7:30 at Toronto Creek Park.
Okay. On the proclamation claiming that April 22nd as Earth Day here in Lake Forest. Okay, and then we're going to claim April 28th as Arbor Day, and we love to keep the forest in Lake Forest. And so, thank you, Tom, for doing a good job with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
For you. Okay, on that, we actually have coming up a meeting for the public for about, do we have a date for our shot whole bore? Do we have dates on that yet? Or?
We have not confirmed with the speakers at this time yet.
Just for everybody's put on notice that we're with the county, the city of Lake Forest, and the whole state of California has been inundated with a new beetle that's been affecting our trees. And so, obviously, here in Lake Forest, we pride ourselves on our trees because it's in our name. So we're going to have an informational meeting that's coming up sometime in the next few months. And so keep your eye open for that. And with that, I brings it to public comments. At this time, members of the public may address the City Council regarding any item within the City of Lake Forest. No action may be taken on items not listed on the agenda unless authorized by law. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person with an overall time limit of 30 minutes for public portion comment of the agenda. Any person wishing to address the City Council on any matter, whether or not it appears on the agenda, is requested to complete a blue request to speaker form at the door and complete it and turn it over to Carlo over here. When you are called to speak, you will have 3 lights, the first being green. Then in 30 seconds left, the light will turn yellow, and then at time expires, your light will turn red. At that time, your public comment portion has ended, and the council requests that you include your comments and save any for future comments for future general meeting. Madam Clerk, do we have any people from the public comment?
Yes.
And we have a 30-minute limit, and we're trying to rein this in a little bit. So we're going to just keep a time record. City Clerk, if we could just put a time on and see how long we go. And we're just going to go until we end, but I just want to keep track of the time today. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Joe Wildermuth, followed by Peggy Falcon.
Good evening, Joe.
I'll try and be quick. I have a couple of topics I'm requesting your action on, and they are the need for sustained and proactive enforcement of the city parking code and the need for an improved process for citizens to report and track parking-related issues. And I wanted to thank a few people here today for activities on Osterman that relate to this topic. First, Councilman Hamilton, for your efforts in organizing a street cleanup and setting up some meetings with the city to help us work the issues on Osterman Road. The city staff, public safety group, for their efforts to remove the oversized vehicles from Osterman and the vehicles that had been stored there for a long term. I believe 12 or 14 vehicles have been towed away. The expansion of the and repainting of the red curbed areas. All of these things have improved the safety and appearance. The Orange County Sheriff's Department for enforcing the city parking codes, and then all the concerned citizens who kind of brought this to the attention. These actions have made a real difference. The only issue with the actions that I have is they're kind of temporal. I don't know how many more clean up the street efforts we're going to have to kind of overcome the lack of street sweeping on the street. I don't know if the Sheriff's Department actually has the resources to continue to police those areas the way they are. So I'm going to jump back now to the 2 topics. I continue to survey the access roads that provide service to the residential areas, particularly in the area I live, of course, Pittsford, Normandale, Northcrest, and they all have the same problem as Osterman, maybe to a lesser degree. They're not as dirty. So I'll speed up here. So jumping back, if we, when I looked at the city contract for law enforcement of the parking codes, it doesn't cover full-time enforcement by the deputy sheriffs or the community service officers. Parking is really handled as ancillary service, so it's subordinate to more important crime, obviously. So to wrap up, since my yellow light's on, what I'm asking for is that you consider in your next budget cycle, it could start off as a pilot, but some type of full-time, dedicated, sustained effort to do parking enforcement. And I would also remind everybody that parking's not getting any better. We got more and more people coming in the city, and I drive by the auto center, the old auto center. I know that's going to be a disaster for parking, so I think it's time. I think the city's gotten to the point where we're big enough, we got enough cars, we need some full-time parking enforcement.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that attention to us.
Peggy Falcon, followed by Randy Johnson.
Good evening, Peggy.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Peggy Falcon, and my home in Lake Forest is now in escrow. I'm here to talk about the wonderful nursery we have between Lake Forest, Rancho, and Bake, and how all the plants emit oxygen and how healthy it is for us, and how immensely large it is. Can you think about we're talking about Earth Day. Well, what about all those plants and how important? My hope is that there is not rezoning, and I think the nursery adds character to our city. And I think we need to be more concerned about the toxins that go into the ground and into our skies. For example, gas stations, cleaners, ABI, and there's a whole list on the City of Lake Forest website. So we need to be concerned about that. And Larissa, who is here, informed me a few weeks ago that she is involved in a class action suit. Well, it just so happens that the Tustin Marine Base has storm drains, and the storm drain actually runs near the house where she grew up as a child. And what the class action suit is all the people in that area that have autoimmune diseases or cancers due to that. And so remember, this is the Tustin Marine Base, the toxins in the ground, and that's certainly not a good thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Randy Johnson.
Well, good evening, Council. Randy Johnson from Lake Forest. Great to be back doing my civic duty. And, I have to say, I was sitting out in the audience here, and I said to myself, gosh, I can miss like 15 or 20 meetings, so I can still figure out what's going on here. And it's like an old soap opera, you know what I mean? Anyway, the reason I'm here tonight is because last meeting I submitted a written statement to you folks on item 9A. It's actually posted to anybody who wants to read it out there in the audience. And it has to do with animal care. And I had some suggestions of what you can do with this customized options you have with Orange County Animal Care to make Lake Forest a more dog owner-friendly city. And in fact, I think some people ran on that, and I'm still waiting for something to happen. Now, I have to say, I have to commend you folks for dropping the dog license on the altered dog from $27 to $20. And I really appreciate that. I sincerely do. And I think it was actually Mr. Robinson, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Robinson who brought it up first, or Mr. Voigt? Mr. Voigt did, okay? You're the winner. And thank you, sir. I give credit where credit's due. And some of the other things that I came up with on my suggestions, this egregious penalties they have for dog licenses has got to go. Now, you folks are in charge. You can tell Orange County Animal Care what to do, okay? So if you don't do this, it's on you. Now, as I told you before, for a $20 license, if you're 16 days late, it's a $35 penalty. And then there's a $35 collection fee. And then if another month goes by and you don't pay, it's $112. That's absolutely absurd. That's absurd. For you to gouge your citizens that way is reprehensible, and it needs to get changed. And I can go over I already gave you a spreadsheet. You know what the other cities pay. Nothing close to that. Nothing close. Okay? Another thing, dog licenses for seniors. Okay? It's 65 years of age here in Lake Forest. The other ones are 62, 60. Okay? Why are you treating the seniors in this city like second-class citizens compared to all the other cities? Give them the same discount at the same age. Another thing, the license for an unaltered dog is $100. Now, I did the math here. You can read this, okay? If you simply reduce that in half, like most of the other cities have, $50, you would probably get 20% of the total licenses would be for altered dogs, for unaltered dogs. That would increase the total revenue to about $21,000 extra a year, because right now it's only 8%. Only 8% of the dogs, of the total licenses in this city, is for unaltered dogs. Something's wrong there. You know why? Nobody's going to pay that fee. That's why. It's too high. It's too high. They're going to break the law before they give you, $100. Another thing about the cats, I told you about this before, the cats, no license fee at all. If you just $15 fee on the cats is all you got to do. There would $54,000 in revenue a year. Look at the math.
Randy, your time's concluded,
Okay.
so you can finish
You
your
can, you
thought.
can look at the math.
Okay.
So come on, stand behind. If you walk your talk, if you tell us that you're going to make Lake Forest a dog owner-friendly city, then do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've had no further requests.
Okay. Okay, we can.
For Joel, I have some good news for you and for everybody. The parking enforcement official is on our budget workshop, which is in about 2 weeks. So, and from what I can feel now, I'm pretty sure that's going to pass. Also, the city manager is working with the staff on a mobile app, which will hopefully, if she follows my specs, allow us to report to code enforcement right away all these kinds of parking anomalies that are happening. So, good things are coming. It doesn't solve the problem today, but those are good things that are coming for Peggy. Thank you. Is she here? Yeah. Thank you very much. For those of you who don't know, Peggy did yeoman's work in terms of finding out about the carcinogenics in the animal shelter ground out there, and provided very valuable information to everybody about where the chemicals were and where the harms were, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you very much for the work on that. And Randy, good to see you. I've been personally very pleased with the fact that we got the Orange County to agree to give us the surrender and euthanized animals. Will now, instead of going to the shelter, will come to the Lake Forest Adoption Center, which opens up on Monday. And they'll be counseled there and then possibly be adopted from there. So that's a big thing for us in Lake Forest. That would be about 80 animals a year will be diverted from going into the shelter. We also got the concession from the director of the county that he's willing to consider doing that same kind of diversion with the stray animals, and there are some legal problems to work out, and our lawyers busy working those out. Those are two major things. Plus, we're going to be increasing our licensing, surveying, and we got agreement from the county shelter to give us all kinds of data on a monthly basis that we've never had access to before. Everything else that you talked about is all important stuff, and we will get to it, but the other things that we've been dealing with have taken our attention. One of the things I'll suggest tonight, which I've suggested before, and it's always been shot down, but that doesn't stop me from suggesting it again, is I believe in this interim period we need an animal committee, or call it whatever you want, to deal with all these kinds of issues, and it would be ad hoc and possibly disappear after a while. But there are so many issues that you list there we need to deal with. We won't deal with them unless we have some kind of committee dealing with that. So thank you very much.
Just briefly, I recall that we had brought up taking a look at the excessive fees that for the penalties for those that don't pay their licenses on time. So
yes, the
am I
direction from the council was to take a look at those fees and bring back suggestions for that during your budget workshop. So the staff is working on that. We will be presenting that to you.
Give rough time frame. We talking 3 months, 6 months?
Your budget workshop's in May.
Oh, at the
Yes.
workshop. Sorry. And is it still in May, or are we moving it now?
Yeah, it's still in May for your operating budget workshop. Your 5-year plan workshop most likely is going to be in July.
Okay, great, thanks.
Councilman Hamilton.
Yeah, so Joel, I just wanted to say thanks for coming out. Raise your hand, I can't see you. Okay, sorry. Thanks for coming out. You know, I feel your pain. I did share both your ideas with staff, forwarded them on to Deborah, also Peggy, or I'm sorry, Rhonda. She had some in-depth concerns too, and I'm happy to say that there was a SUV that did get towed recently in the last day or two. So I've talked to the chief, and he says they're out there almost every day. I agree, and I think I will be in support of having a traffic enforcement person that, as Councilman Gardner said, is needed. Does that mean all your issues are going to be solved? No. You know, if there's opportunities for street sweeping or permit parking or things like that, I mean, I think we should continue having the dialogue, and you know, I'm always open to talking further, and hopefully we can continue to improve. I know it's not going to be perfect. And so, Peggy, I was also going to mention, I don't see where you're at. Okay, thank you. I love oxygen. In fact, I'm a frequent trail rider on both the Aliso Creek and Serrano Creek, and have gone on both those trails at least probably 3 times in the last 7 days or so. Let's say a week and a half. So going by all the open spaces. In fact, I was going to try and get it over to my bigger screen, but I just recently saw 2 deer. They're Lake Forest residents. I don't know if you can see them, but those 2 deer were on a trail that I was on just recently, and so they're enjoying the oxygen too, and they were in the city limits of Lake Forest. So I think it's very important, and I love the open spaces. I love breathing all the oxygen in from those great trees that line all the trails along Aliso Creek and Serrano Creek. So, and our parks too. I go through some of our parks. So thanks for bringing that up. I love oxygen too.
With that brings us to item number 6, Warrant Registry. All matters listed under the consent calendar Warrant Registry are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a member of the City Council, the public, or staff requests specific items to be removed from the Warrant Registry for separate action. Have there been any requests to pull?
No, Your Honor.
Council?
Yeah, I'd like to pull 11, 14, and 15.
This is just item 6, right, Mr. Mayor?
Oh.
Just yeah.
Oh, sorry.
The warrant.
Oh, sorry.
Those are
Okay,
well noted.
No, that's okay.
If there are none, I'll move the item.
Okay, thank you. Second, please.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, please cast your votes.
Councilmember Robinson, have you locked in your vote? Thank you. That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Consent calendar miscellaneous items 7 through 16. Now this is where you go. Okay. All matters listed in the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless Mayor Pro Tem pulls them, or the City Council, or the public or staff request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Have there been any requests from the public for the consent calendar?
We've had no requests.
Okay, Council.
11, 14, and 15, please.
11, 14, and 15.
And they're just really easy questions.
All right.
8.
And 8. Anything further, Council? I would take motion for the retainer.
And 16.
Oh, and 16. Anything other?
I'll move the remainder.
Or can we get a motion for the
There's not
last
many
few?
left.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor of 7, 9, 10, 13, and 12? Cast your votes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay.
Agenda item 8, minutes of the regular meeting of the City Council held on April 4, 2017, submitted by City Clerk and removed from the consent calendar by Councilmember Gardner.
Yeah, just to note the amended minutes, and I'll move that we accept them.
Okay, I'll accept that. I'll second that.
I have a comment that I want to make on the minutes, and if I'm straying because of the minutes, Mr. City Attorney, let me know. In the minutes, it was mentioned, I think with respect to vector control, that some residents, I don't know how many, but some residents would like to see a brief update. A lot of us sit on boards, and I think that updates wouldn't be a bad idea to do at some routine level, whether it's the library board, OCFA, I'm on the JPIA, you're on some water boards, and then TCA and vector control from the mayor. So, I think there might be some value doing that, maybe once a quarter, twice a year, whatever it might be, just so that we can update one another on what's going on and the residents. So, I thought that was a fair comment, something that we should all probably work on.
Do you want to bring that up in council comments?
I will.
Good idea.
Okay. This motion's been made and seconded. Please cast your votes for item number 8.
That motion passes unanimously. Agenda item 11, First Amendment to the Agreement with Shelter Clean Services for Bus Shelter Maintenance, submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer, and removed from the consent calendar by Mayor Pro Tem Basil.
My brief question, it actually applies to all three of the ones I pulled, just satisfaction levels. I just noticed that these 3 items on the list were not all very satisfied, and I just want to make sure that we're happy with our service contracts and they're doing a good job for us, and if there was anything that stood out in any of these 3 contracts that would have warranted a not very satisfied result.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. That's a great question. If we weren't satisfied, we wouldn't bring them back to council. We grade harshly, or hard at least, so not everyone's perfect, and we want to be honest and transparent with really how they're doing. That's why you're not going to see all perfect scores all the time. We're very satisfied with all of these consultants. If I had to give one score, I'd be very satisfied. But we want to make sure everyone understands that we're looking at these critically and have expectations that if they want to exceed them, then they're going to get higher ranks.
Kind of a carrot out there for them.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. That's what the amendments allow us to do.
Entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion we approve those 3.
And I'll second.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So, I had the exact same questions with these, because whenever we notice a deviation, so I talked to the city manager about it this afternoon. And then earlier this year, I mentioned specifically Lake Forest Drive kind of stood out to me at one point where some of the trash cans were overflowing at the bus stops. And so is there something in that I'm just probing more because I'm trying to understand exactly what caused that deviation from the very satisfied. Is there something that we're pushing them toward? It's as our community continues to improve, the expectation levels that each one of us have as residents continues to rise clearly. So, I'm just wondering, is there anything that's coming out of that the satisfied, you're saying, this is how you can get to very satisfied, and what would that be if you have it top of mind to mention right now?
Absolutely. I'll give an example. It might be a bad one, but this is the one that comes to mind. With Lake Forest Electric, which got all very high marks, or very satisfied marks. They go above and beyond. So, for instance, we've changed our practice since then, but when we have a power outage at a traffic signal, they were the ones that were called out to install emergency generators. They would actually do traffic control at these intersections that were out while they were installing them to keep traffic moving. Now, that's a practice that I asked them to stop for some obvious liability reasons. They shouldn't be out there controlling traffic, but that's the one example that comes to mind of that kind of passion of a contractor that goes above and beyond something that we didn't ask them to do. It's not in their scope of work. But Lake Forest Electric is one of those companies that does that. They'll go out extra time to double-check lights at fields and courts and stuff. Some of the other contractors, we all know how difficult it is to get a great contractor, let alone a good contractor. But Lake Forest Electric is one of those contractors that will go out and do that extra effort. The other ones do great work, and various degrees, and that's what our scores try to reflect, is how much extra passion, extra effort for Shelter Clean. I would love if they were more proactive. We get an exhaustive list from them of with each invoice every month. We get a report of how each shelter looks and how it is. They could be a little more proactive if they want to get super high marks. Others could communicate better. But it's those extra things. They're all doing the scope of work. They're all performing great work. But you can always there's always room for improvement. And that's the sort of, if that gives you a gauge to how we kind of look at things.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I think that in a competitive environment, that's something for them to definitely understand. So they're meeting the scope of work, but there may be someone who, when the contract does come up, says, "I really want to get this, and I'm showing in the other cities that I'm working in how much more I do beyond just the scope of work." And I know that we're always paying attention to that. So I appreciate your comments, and just want to encourage them to continue to strive for the best, because that's what we all hope for. So thanks.
Okay, please cast your votes.
And for clarification, that's items 11, 14, and 15.
15.
Okay. Mayor Voigt, thank you.
Thought I did.
That motion passes unanimously. Agenda item 16, Professional Consultant Contract Award for Professional Planning Services, submitted by Director of Development Services, Economic Development, and removed from the consent calendar by Councilmember Robinson.
I'm going to be really quick here, so I know exactly what you're trying to accomplish, get some additional help on the planning side. I just found it interesting that the two planning companies that we have right now that are helping us were also bidding to provide us the extra service, it seemed like. Am I right? Or no, maybe that was from the 16 bid, right? Okay. So can they not provide the additional help, or does this third company give us something that they don't?
Mayor and council members, what we have found for the past year, working with the two consulting firms we brought on board, due to the competition in the marketplace as well as our particular needs, we're having difficulty to find someone who can quickly come on board with the skills we need to stay here. We like our consultants to be here at City Hall, to be accessible, to coordinate with other departments. So our needs are kind of robust, and the market is very tight. So a third firm, the first two firms are still under contract with us.
Yeah.
We created the list less than a year ago, so we went with the third firm just to broaden our pool so that we can quickly bring people on, because we can't control when applications come in, and so we could get something that comes in. We're anticipating potentially sell-side applications, and we find our need to be quite immediate.
Great. I think I had an aha moment as soon as I saw you smile when I started that question, because it got a little confusing for me with having the list from 2016, and even though I knew it, I was kind of looking at, they were all bidding on this third one. That's not what it was. So, but thank you very much. And the last part of that is, I know that they're a little bit more expensive than our other two. I think they were, the assistant planner was at $75 an hour, but maybe it was the senior planner, the top dollar one was like $125, where the others were $95 to $105 or something like that. This is all paid by developers or contractors or residents that are going to have a project that would require some planning, something like that. Is that correct?
Mayor and council members, a majority, we estimate 70-80% of the work the contracts planners do is an application-based. Occasionally we'll have them go out, they're supplementing for staff that may be on leave, or they're doing particular studies for us, but certainly a large majority of their time is billable.
Okay. And do you think that the dollar differential has any significant impact to like a contractor that would be coming in? Do you think they would be disappointed to see the higher dollar amount, or does it just kind of like spread out throughout all the different projects out there?
We've used this form of contracting in Public Works for other ones, and so each firm has their own slightly different billing rates. As you can see from the chart we provided, although the principal may be more expensive, then this one's not, so there's a lot of flexibility. What we determined in 2016 is we thought all the rates were reasonable.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'll move that.
Second that. All in favor, please cast your votes.
That motion passes unanimously.
That was item number 16, correct?
Correct.
That brings us to public hearing. I will open this public hearing, and we can receive staff report, please.
Agenda item 17, consideration of the fiscal year 2017-18 annual action plan submitted by Director of Development Services, Economic Development.
Mayor and members of the council, our housing manager, Jessica Gonzalez, is going to provide a report to you tonight.
Our superstar.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight's public hearing is for approval of the fiscal year 2017-2018 Community Development Block Grant Action Plan. As a recipient of the federal grant, the city must annually adopt an action plan that outlines how it will use the grant to address the goals and objectives adopted in the city's 5-year consolidated plan. The action plan was created using the expenditure plan that the City Council approved on March 7, 2017. The city held a 30-day public comment period but did not receive any comments during this time. To date, a federal budget has not been adopted, and consequently, HUD has not notified the city of its official grant for the fiscal year 2017-2018. However, the city is required to file the action plan with HUD by May 15th, more specifically 45 days before the start of the new fiscal year. In light of the pending federal budget approval, HUD recently issued a budget directive stating that jurisdictions should have the action plan approved by its authorizing body and submit the action plan by the required deadline or immediately after the federal budget has been approved and official grant amounts are known. As such, we recommend the City Council approve the current action plan and direct staff to adjust the allocations in relation to the actual grant. Staff and the city's CDBG consultant are available for any questions.
Well, then, bring it to the public first.
We've had no request to speak.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to council for comments and questions.
I'll move
I have a
staff's
question.
recommendation.
I do too.
Question. Come on. I've read from the Age Well people that CDBG is in danger at the federal level, and do you know anything about that?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. So as of right now, the President's proposed reductions or elimination of the Community Development Block Grant, that is for the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget cycle. To date, we are unaware of any proposed reductions to CDBG in the upcoming fiscal year 2017-2018 cycle.
For the people in the audience, CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, it's our way of building the disabled sidewalks and funding lots of the nonprofit groups. So it's a pretty important source of money that the federal government gives us. Okay, so we're safe for this year, but
Correct.
possibly not for next year.
Correct.
Thank you.
I had the same question. Some of the consultants out there making presentations to other cities are suggesting at this point that there is a potential 50% reduction in the 17-18 budget. So it sounds like we're not aware of that, but if we could look into that and just try to delve a little bit deeper and see, where that information may be coming from. If it's not accurate, then don't feel like you have to report back, but if it is, then it will have a significant impact on this next fiscal year. So maybe we could talk about that at one of our budget meetings. Sure. Thank you.
And maybe if the staff, Carlo or one of the staff members, normally we just look at state legislation, but it might bear us. And if we find out it's going that direction, there's something we can do, or maybe work with other cities to urge that.
Yeah, I think typically I like to keep my money close and try to figure out how I'm going to spend it myself. But as I'm sure you do, just a lot of charitable giving, and I picked the charities that I want to support, a lot of them that are Lake Forest based and definitely most Orange County based. With that said, Orange County so with Lake Forest, I think we're, compared to the county, we're probably a little bit of a donor city when it comes to some of the other cities. Definitely Orange County is a donor county to the state of California, meaning more of our tax dollars leave the county than what gets brought back. And then the state of California, on the whole, is, for the most part, a donor state where the tax revenue that goes to the federal government, not as much comes back. And so, from that perspective, I think fighting to get our tax dollars back to give us the local control to determine how it's going to be spent, there's a lot of value in. Now, if they were going to find ways of reducing taxes and fees so that we all could make those decisions ourselves, then that could be something that I would be supportive of because then I would be able to pick and choose myself. But short of that, I don't want to see those dollars stay in Washington, D.C., where they get spent on a lot of things that I wouldn't like them to be spent on and I have no control over, rather than those dollars coming back to Lake Forest, where we get to pick and try to determine where they make the biggest impact. And as we see on this list, there's organizations such as South County Outreach that are doing amazing work here in Orange County that we're directing these dollars toward. And so, I think that there's a lot of value in this program, short of their giving the money back to us. So,
seeing nothing, is there any other council members or entertain motions?
Yeah, I'll second.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Jessica. That brings us to discussion items.
Agenda item 18, Boys and Girls Club presentation submitted by Director of Community Services.
Mayor and members of the City Council, tonight we have a brief presentation from Community Services Director Scott Wasserman.
Thank you, Deborah. As I get started, I just wanted to point out there are several representatives from the Boys and Girls Club sitting behind me. Executive Director Pamela Estes, and also now we have Board President Dave Carter and Planning Commissioner Dave Carter. And I believe there are some other board members present here, should you have any questions at the conclusion of my brief presentation. And to get started, there we go. At City Council's meeting of October 18th, 2016, the Council directed staff to work with the Boys and Girls Club of Laguna Beach to prepare a comprehensive report on potential city-owned properties that would accommodate a Boys and Girls Club facility in the city of Lake Forest. As we got started, some of the site criteria included identifying a location in the club's preferred service area, which is the southwest quadrant of the city, and also finding a spot that was had sufficient space for a recreation facility and a parking lot. And we went through the entire inventory of city properties. These are some of the properties that we looked at. We looked at the Authority parcel and the Mamie Thomas site, which are located near the intersection of Geronimo and El Toro Boulevard. And after looking at these sites, the Boys and Girls Club determined that there were some issues with access and the size and the sites that just provided certain restrictions that wouldn't meet their needs very well. We moved on to look at the proposed Normandale Park site and the proposed Whispering Hills Park sites, which are spacious, but they are not located in the preferred service area, which is in the southwest quadrant of the city. And the city also provided 3 storefront sites that at the time were available for lease. 2 of those sites were not located in the preferred service area. One of the sites was located in the preferred service area, and Boys and Girls Club staff did follow that up, and ultimately the building owner was not amenable to someone operating a Boys and Girls Club facility out of that storefront. So after we reviewed these city properties, the Boys and Girls Club asked if they could explore the use of space in El Toro Park. They like this area for 2 reasons. One is quite simply it's located within their desired service area, and the club already, since 2013, the club has been serving youth from Gates Elementary School and Olivewood Elementary Schools, which are nearby. Showing up here, the red dot there represents, that is the appropriate quadrant of the city. This is their defined service area. This is obviously a map of El Toro Park. The gold box represents the proposed site for the actual facility, which we initially started talking about a portable facility like a portable trailer. And the white box there represents a proposed parking lot. And this street right here, this is Larkwood Lane. This is actually a cul-de-sac that terminates about right there. And we talked about the need, of course, for providing a parking lot in here. There would be a need to provide vehicular access to the park site. And this is one way this is how this might look if you did so from Larkwood. And we discussed all the other alternatives. There may be a possibility of providing the same type of vehicular access from Muirlands over here. And I mentioned that this is their preferred service area. Up in the box here, I have a note. Gates Elementary School, of course, is right around the corner. It's maybe a tenth of a mile away. Olivewood Elementary School is approximately 1 mile away. Next, I have a few photos just to acquaint the City Council with the site. This is essentially the site where they'd like to place the trailer. And the arrow there is pointing at, this is irrigation equipment. So these are water meters, these are irrigation control boxes, some irrigation lines that run along the park here that would likely need to be relocated. And of course, this back here, this is the fence that separates El Toro Park from the adjacent mobile home park. This vantage point, this is actually Larkwood Lane here. This is the end of that cul-de-sac, Larkwood Lane. The site that they're talking about is actually up here. The arrow in the foreground, this is pointing to an electrical box that may need to be relocated. In the background, you can see, it's just another vantage point. This is the same irrigation cage, irrigation equipment that we showed you in the last photo. And this is yet another vantage point. This, of course, is the same irrigation equipment to the right. Just to get everyone oriented, this is the fence that separates the park from the adjacent mobile home park. And down here in the background, you can see Larkwood Lane. And this is a shot sort of from down the slope. To provide a little perspective, the arrow in the back there, that's pointing to the irrigation cage that we talked about that would need to be relocated. This entire area here would likely be taken up by the facility and the proposed parking lot. In the foreground, what we're looking at are storm drains that would likely need to be relocated since they run underneath the site. And just some considerations for the City Council. Programmatically, there would be some overlap with the city's Kids Factory program and the school district's the Learning Connection or the TLC program, which is a daycare program. Both schools are operational in Gates Elementary and Olivewood Elementary School. They're the same schools that would be served by the Boys and Girls Club. Another consideration really has to do with the use of the park. El Toro Park, if you go there around 3:15, school's out at approximately 2:45 p.m. If you go there between 3:15 and a quarter to 4, you would see between 80 to 100 kids there that congregate in the park after school. They congregate around the playground, just generally in the park. I don't really know if that's a place where their parents pick them up or if it's just somewhere that they go to hang out with their friends before they go home after school. But the consideration would be that in this park, it's mostly rolling hills and trees. We do have some amenities. We have a playground. There's a public restroom, tennis courts. There's also some exercise equipment there. This is really one of the only flat, grassy areas in the park. So redesigning the park to accommodate the Boys and Girls Club there, it would reduce by about half the flat, green, grassy area. And the next step, so just to summarize, what the City Council asked us to do was really to explore with the Boys and Girls Club the inventory of city-owned property, and we've done that. And after we got through the city-owned property, Boys and Girls Club representative asked about the feasibility of locating a facility in El Toro Park. And I've given you a little bit of background on the impact to El Toro Park, some of the considerations for you in making this decision. Next steps, broadly speaking, would be developing a formal agreement specifying roles and responsibilities for the city and the Boys and Girls Club, identifying the costs associated with redesigning the park, determining who will pay for the redesign of the park and the cost of construction, and developing a formal lease agreement with the Boys and Girls Club. And there are essentially three options for the City Council to proceed. Option one is appropriate if the City Council is comfortable moving forward with El Toro Park. You could direct staff to negotiate an agreement with the Boys and Girls Club to redesign the park and site a Boys and Girls Club facility in the park. Next steps for the city would involve convening at least one or two community meetings to solicit input from the surrounding neighborhood. One of the things we did in preparation for tonight's meeting, we did send out letters to the surrounding neighborhood just advising them that this was being considered and that it would be discussed at tonight's meeting. I did get one phone call from a gentleman who lives around the corner across the street from Gates Elementary who just expressed his concern would be the potential impact to parking and vehicular traffic in the area. So if we were to proceed with El Toro Park, staff would recommend convening at least one or two additional meetings to solicit input from the community. We would also recommend getting an engineer's estimate of the actual cost of construction, and that's something that we would probably need to budget for. Option 2 involves directing staff to work with the Boys and Girls Club to explore other suitable locations. Option 3, the City Council could defer consideration of the Boys and Girls Club's proposal until after the City Council has developed its 5-year strategic business plan and identified policy priorities. And this would really let the City Council figure out where this would fit in with all of your priorities, with everything that's coming up with the construction of the Civic Center, the renovation of parks, the construction of Portola Park in the future. So that would be option 3. And at that point, I will turn it over to the City Council for any questions that you might have.
We'll have public comments first.
Dave Carter, followed by Pam Estes.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. Dave Carter, 35-year resident of Lake Forest and the driving force behind what's going on here, along with Pam. We started this thing about 10 years ago, and our area of emphasis has always been in this particular area. Primarily New Orleans south to the freeway between, say, Lake Forest and Los Alisos. Saw that as an area that was definitively in need of this kind of facility. These are all preliminary items that we have right now. There are ways to simplify a lot of it. We don't want to bifurcate the park with a road going through it. We'd much rather the safety of the kids is the most important aspect of the design of what we're trying to do. We wish to minimize the impact on the park because that's what we want to be there for, these kids to have access to that park. So I'm ready to go. I hope you guys are ready to go. Option 1 is what I'm looking forward to. That's my preferred. I do have to indicate one thing. A planning commissioner, of which I am, I will be recusing myself from all decisions and discussions at the Planning Commission related to this, because at some point in time, I'm sure it will be coming up to the Commission if you decide to move forward. So I just wanted to state that for public record, that I realize that that is my responsibility to do so. Okay? If anybody has any questions of myself. One of the things I might note that you saw in that picture of the park where they had the proposed building in the center, or the parking in the center of the park, and the building on the other side. An option would be to flip those. Put the building more towards the center of the park for utilization, because it simplifies the ingress-egress to what would be a parking facility in a level area on the park. It will minimize a lot of the stuff that would potentially have to be moved. We would have to have an engineering study done, and we have folks hopefully on board that we're going to be able to tap and have them come. This will be an item that Boys and Girls Club, I'm responsible for funding, and starting tomorrow, if this is approved tonight, or it looks positive, we're going to start doing a building fund type activity to get this thing going. We'll start off small, bring it back, and do whatever we can to get these kids going. So if there's any questions, I'd gladly answer them for you.
I have a question that I already know the answer to, but I just want to have it for the record. So you're not an employee?
No.
You're not paid in any way by Boys and Girls Club?
No.
So there wouldn't be a conflict with your colleagues
No.
voting?
The only conflict that I would see is that I'm directly involved with the Boys and Girls Club. This is a project that I have brought forward. I do not think that with that being considered, it would be appropriate for me as a planning commissioner to be involved with that discussion. Now, I'll check with council to make sure that is true, but I'm certain that it is. But I will be involved directly with all fundraising activity. I do not do any of the administrative components of the program itself.
Understood, and I knew that to be the case, but just wanted to make it clear that your fellow planning commissioners wouldn't have a problem voting on something because you don't have a financial interest in it. First, it's a nonprofit, and then you're not an employee or a volunteer. So
that is correct.
All right, thank you for your comment. Thanks for your involvement.
All right.
Pamela Estes, followed by Paula Arnold.
I'd like to introduce, this is our board president, Paula Arnold, and I wanted to start out just reminding you the reason why the Boys and Girls Club of Laguna Beach is here, and that is because the national organization is no longer chartering new organizations. Any growth has to come from existing organizations. So this would be the Boys and Girls Club of Lake Forest, but just we would be the ones running the programs. Our organization, this year, our budget's $2.6 million. We have 50 people on staff, and we have been working with kids specifically when we started to do put a business plan together. We identified Gates and Olivewood because they were such high need, and what we found was people that live in Lake Forest aren't even aware of the need of these families. So we really, since 2013, have done everything we can to work with the kids and the families. And we've come up against a lot of obstacles. You know, you wouldn't think it would be that hard to do free programming for children. But the main constant through all those obstacles, it's location. We just need a place for the kids. And Dave Carter, he is not paid by the organization, but he has paid like blood, sweat, and tears to get this thing going. Also, just a quick reminder that with Gates and Olivewood Elementary schools, over the majority of kids at both those schools, they are low-income families. They are mostly Hispanic and Latino, and for the most part, they're English learners, which means English is not their first language. So, you know, the odds are stacked against these kids, and what we want to do is just to help them grow and thrive. And there's been a study by the University of Michigan that showed for every $1 that's invested in a Boys and Girls Club, that there is $10 in return in community benefit, and that's with the kids' grades and not doing drugs and the parents' earnings. So it really is an investment not just in their future, but in the community as a whole. So, Paula.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I am Paula Arnold. I am immediate past president of the Laguna Beach Boys and Girls Club and current president for all of the Orange County area Boys and Girls Clubs. We've been working together. I've been a member of the board of directors for 8 or 9 years and met Dave pretty much right off the bat, and this has been his mission from the time I joined the Boys and Girls Club. So it's really nice to be standing up here in front of all of you and have gotten this far. And it has taken us that long, but we have gotten this far. So we're really super excited to hopefully move forward with this.
Okay. Well, thank you for your comments.
I just have a brief one. So there was mentioned a little bit with respect to overlap with TLC and Kids Factory. And so, you know, what do you all see? And I don't know if Dave's the better one to answer that or if you can, but...
Well, so at Gates Elementary alone, there are 900 kids that would be eligible for membership at the Boys and Girls Club. And, you know, we were actually there at the park site yesterday afternoon, just at that time, like Scott was saying about when the kids were all getting out of school. I mean, it was like just, you know, waves and waves of kids, and they're just out there on the park. And they were coming from every direction because there's middle schools and other elementary schools. So it was really easy to picture having a building there and having all of these kids instead of just hanging in the park. They're actually involved with activities and with, you know, caring professional youth development people.
Looks like Dave wants to answer the question, too.
Yeah, if I could just jump in on that particular comment. This is an opportunity for the city to have an opportunity to do possibly something different if it was warranted. An evaluation of the programs that are being presented to the city by the Saddleback School District, and evaluation of what the Boys and Girls Club can offer. There may be an opportunity here for us to join together and bring it into the web of the community because that's what this is about. These kids are our kids, not the school districts. They're Lake Forest. And the one thing that has always impressed me about the Laguna Beach Boys and Girls Club, there are individuals who went to that club who are now major players in Laguna Beach. They're on the board of directors, and it just shows what the commitment that community has made and how it's come back, and it's actually benefiting the community. And I can see that same thing happening here. This is a community very similar to Laguna Beach. Different in nature as to, our economics, where they come from. But as far as the family-oriented aspect of the community, and this will bring those kids more into ours. I'd love to have a kid join today and sit on the council 20 years afterwards.
I have one other comment just to add
What?
about the difference, between the TLC, which TLC is a fee-based program. So, most of those kids can't afford to attend that program. Kids Factory is free, but it is only until 4:30 in the afternoon. It's I'm not sure of the qualifications of the people that are running it, but it's more of just a drop-in hangout, and it's outside. And it even says on their paperwork, you have to call, if it's going to rain, you have to call because it may not happen. So we would be there for sure. They'd be able to rely on us.
Thank you. Bring it back to council. My first thing would probably be to take it to item number option 3. Just the fact is that we've got our 5-year strategic business plan coming up, and we're moving into our general plan update. I've been involved with the Garden Grove Boys and Girls Club and the Tustin, and I've always been impressed with the quality of the after-school programs there. But when we come to dedicating city park land to a not-for-profit, I somewhat feel, who picks and chooses that? I mean, the Veterans of 401 VFW Post 49, Dana Point, would like to start a post here in Lake Forest for the veterans to hang out at. And so when we start giving away land and allowing our parks to become developed for whatever not-for-profit, the City of Lake Forest actually runs a kids factory that we charge $25 annually for kids to come to hang out after school for. And then we have a teen lounge where we have buses that go to Serrano Junior High and Los Alisos Junior High and bus the junior hires to the Lake Forest Sports Park. And they do computer, watch games, and do their homework at the sports park. So I want to thank Dave for his hard work and diligence in this, but I'd rather see the full picture. I think that we have an area that we're going to eventually be addressing, which is by the Big 5 shopping center. If we can ever get that land management and open up that pothole there, there's actually storefronts there that actually I think that would be a great location. Is his geographic boundaries there between the 5 freeway and Muirlands. But I just see that this park is a long, narrow park, and the only big location for actually the kids to play is the area that you're talking about paving over and putting classrooms. So that would be my objection to actually having it at the El Toro Park, because the fact is it's the only park along that stretch there, along the creek, and it's the largest, biggest chunk of flat open space for the park. Otherwise, you have a long, narrow 50-foot by 30-foot stretch of park. That's my take on that. So, yes.
So I share some of those concerns too, and we have had. I value your proposal, because I think what it has done is, I think it's, for me, it's clarified a few things, and so let me start there. So we've had lots of discussions here at the council about the kids factory. We've had discussions about wanting to be more scholarship, increase the fees a little bit, but then provide scholarship for those who have the need. We've talked about the city providing traffic services, the crossing guard services. We also provide, and the city pays 100% of that, even though the school district, it's students going to and from school. The city still pays 100% of the crossing guards. I think the city pays 100% of the sheriff, the DARE and the school resource officer. So I personally think it's time that I think we should, with all these things that we pay for, right? It is and I appreciate, Mr. Carter, your comments on it being a city, and I want to agree with you with that. However, it is an after-school program, and so I think you would probably agree being in the school would probably be the most ideal place. There's not going to be transportation cost. I don't know if you have an opinion on whether having like two different locations. If somehow we were to negotiate with the school district and allow them and they would allow potentially Gates as a site and Olivewood as a site, is that something that would be? And I know we've tried that, but I think we've got the power of the purse here, and I think we should redouble our efforts. And I think another thing, too, that you've mentioned in the past is the insurance. The school district is concerned about insurance. Would you have insurance to indemnify them? Maybe.
Okay. We're getting into the same that we've had for a long time. The school district sees us as a direct opposition to them and a challenge to them, and I'll take that. It's about time they've been challenged. I want to give some opportunity and some guidance to these kids. I don't want a kid with a lanyard running around watching the kids from 2:30 in the afternoon until 4:30, and the parents have to pick them up. We will operate Monday through Friday during the summer, 8 to 6. So that takes care of the argument with the school district. We've tried to work with the school district. They see us, as I say, as competitive, and rightfully so. We have not been in a competitive posture with them. Our focus is on the kids and the fact that even go to school district campuses at Gates and Olivewood, they don't even have balls for the kids to play with during the afternoon lunch sessions, only because we volunteered our folks to come in there and help them with that the kids are actually getting activity. So that's what I see the difference between what we're offering and what the school district is offering. We're self-sustaining. Granted, I'm trying to emulate a business that's been around and a group that's been around for 60 years, but I'm bringing the expertise along with me to do this. I think it's something that it's more of a fabric opportunity. The kids go to Boys and Girls Club because they love it. I've got my brother-in-law's kids that come out from Arizona every summer not to visit him. They go to Boys and Girls Club. That's really why they come. That's the way that it's involved. You talk to individuals who have been in Boys and Girls Club from Laguna Beach, and this is Crevier, and you could probably come up with more names. And these are individuals that are pillars of their community, and they started at Boys and Girls Club. And you have, I'd hate to throw up, what's his name, the actor? Denzel Washington. Okay. There's a multitude of kids who have come through this program. And the thing that really brought my focus to it was the fact that in the 4th grade is when the school district starts evaluating where these kids are. And if they haven't got it from the 1st to the 4th grade, they're 4 years behind. That's their rationale. Okay, in the 4th grade is when they're going to start evaluating what they're doing. We start them off at 1st grade, and even before that, because they do a preschool at there. It's one of the only ones in California. So there are tremendous advantages. We're not talking about taking over the park. I don't want to, put, a building over a grassy area for any purpose. Okay, if I could run it out without having a building around them and they wouldn't get wet in the rain, be great. But we have to have a facility to house them in for their study. We're talking about putting in a laboratory in there for computers, activity in their art, those type of things. But mostly supervision. And these are from people that are qualified and have been trained to do that. That's the advantage.
No, and I agree with that. And it just, to me, they've got their after-school program. I can't remember what the name is. We've got our Kids Factory. Now you're going to be, in essence, there's going to be 3 different, and it just seems to me that we should consider combining all of those in together. I think we should redouble our efforts and try it again. Because we're paying all this money. I'm willing to...
After 10 years of trying to work with the school district, okay, and...
Have we had council and staff discussions along it?
I've been to I've gone to the board meetings at the district, okay, it's fallen on deaf ears. You're dealing with well, here again, I'm the finance. This is the person that knows administratively what goes on. I frankly get frustrated with it. I am not a person that likes to dilly-dally around. I like to get things done. When I see a need, I like to address it. That's just the way I come. That's just the way I'm constructed.
Dave, can I ask you a question? And, about 8 months ago, there was the old Slater 50/50 building that was on sale. Why didn't you guys look at buying that? It's a perfect geographic location. It's the area that I would deem that is a storefront, because the fact is where you go to Tustin or Garden Grove or Anaheim, those are all Boys and Girls Club that are in storefronts, and that the city's not utilizing our parkland. And so my problem is you guys are not-for-profit, and the Veterans of Foreign Wars would love to do a VFW post in Lake Forest. Why not only give the parkland for them, or should I go to Pittsburgh Park and give them the land?
So currently in Laguna Beach, we have 3 sites, as well as we're on school sites.
Laguna Beach Unified works with you?
Yes, yeah. And we're there even at lunchtime running activities. And right now we're actually doing that at Olivewood 1 day a week, because they don't even have PE. So we're there running sports tournaments for them at lunchtime. So our other 2, so we have our main, it's a 25,000 square foot facility that's in the canyon right next to Sawdust Festival. Come and see it. We just had a new little remodel. But our other 2 sites are, we have one that on Bluebird Park, which we lease from the city for $1 a year. That's a 900 square foot facility. And then we've got a 1,200 square foot facility on Lane Park, which we lease from the city for $1 a year. And I don't know. I mean, these kids have got the odds stacked against them, and they are the future.
But we're city, and the fact is we're doing our fair share with crossing guards, police resource officers, giving them. Tonight we just signed off on a CDGP.
Right, and so
10 grand.
Can I go back to the question about the building for sale? Until we have a site where we can get our programs up and running, like really up and running, we aren't going to be able to raise the money for a building. I mean, we need to have the commitment that we're going to be able to do this, that we need to have somewhere to be in order to raise the money to build it. And so with the city council giving us at least the confirmation to explore further what it would entail to actually make this happen, that's what we're asking.
So
for.
I'll go with that. I'm not. I would love the city of Lake Forest to help you guys out, and actually, if you guys could apply.
Well, I think we would be helping Lake Forest.
Well, I think that we're already. So I'll move and make a motion that we move. For discussion for option 3, and defer it to so we actually do our strategic business plan. So
I'll second that, just so that we can go on to further
go ahead.
discussion. And for about the last couple of months, I keep asking myself, what is a city? And I'm not sure if any of you have had the misfortune of running into me while I've been in my Socratic wander the streets of Athens mode. What is a city? And I haven't been able to figure it out. But I think it's important because when we go into the strategic planning and the budget, we have to, for today, for 2017, we have to redefine what a city is. And we know what it's been for 25 years, but it's not what it was 25 years ago. And so we and they and all of us have to redefine what the city is. And I'm looking forward to the strategic planning so that we can do that together, so that when a proposal like this comes to us, we'll know how that fits in, because we will have, said this is what a city is. Now, I can't imagine a city doesn't do this, that kids aren't the first thing a city does. But maybe you're right, it's until we've done that, until we've sat down and put all these things together and said, okay, what do we agree on? Where will we spend our money? How will we spend it? I think it's premature. I think this needs to be on the board, though, and this is a viable option.
I'll agree with you, and I'm willing to look at it with a 5-year strategic business plan, but, there's nobody that's in the schools more than I am, whether it be Olivewood or Gates or La Madera, Serrano Junior High, and the fact is that the Saddleback Unified School District has a new superintendent who actually was the principal at Olivewood. Crystal is coming back. She got hired. Her first day was today. Maybe there's a new day. The fact is a negotiated agreement that we work with them and you to help with after-school programs that would actually defer our kids' factory, which we're utilizing and subsidizing, because we pay for the staffing at all those elementary schools and at the sports park for kids that need after-school care. So I think that it being in partnership with those that are educating and working hand in hand. If Laguna Beach is working with, I think Tustin Unified works with the Tustin Boys and Girls Club too. Tustin Unified. What is the stomach? Was it the last superintendent? Please enlighten us, because it just seems like the kids are their responsibility.
I agree 100%, and I have a theory of what the reasoning is.
Please.
Because we've been on there. We actually were able to get in there to Olivewood at one point because there was a new principal who didn't know any better. And when they found out we were there, then they told us we couldn't come back. And I believe it possibly could be that they're running a program that they charge for. We wouldn't charge.
But you do the same.
Beyond. I mean, we are all about health. We use evidence-based approaches. We're very much about the social and emotional skill building.
So is there a shared agreement that you guys, with these other cities, Tustin Unified, Laguna Beach Unified, if you guys...
But what I'm saying is that I don't believe, I don't know about those, but I know that the TLC program that's put on by the school district is a fee-based program. And so I could see potentially if we were on site and offering a free program that could impact the money that they're raising.
We do the same thing with a $25 annual cost, and the fact is that if we could turn that all over to you, whatever we use for Kids Factory, we could give to Boys and Girls Club Lake Forest.
I'm not like opposed to being on the school campus. It seems like a natural, thing, the way that it should go. It's just, it's been how many years now? And I mean, it's the kids. They're out there. The families are asking for us. We're busing 100 kids during the summer from that park over to our main branch in Laguna Beach because there's nothing else for them to do.
And the schools are barely being used here in Lake Forest during the summertime,
right? Because
they only have a few of them that are open for summer school now.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So there's a motion and a second.
So can I offer a friendly amendment? Yeah. I'm amenable to option number 3, but I don't think staff and the council and their board have had these kind of discussions, if I'm not mistaken. And so I would like to add to your motion that we have a concerted effort of direct involvement, and I'd be willing to be one of those people to have the Unified School District staff, Saddleback Unified, city staff, council, and their board, their trustees, board of trustees, to all meet to hash out this kind of proposal and discuss it. And I think it's important that they understand that we're paying 100% of the crossing guards, 100% of the sheriff, 100% of the Kids Factory. That's ours, right? Yeah, Kids Factory is ours.
And Teen Lounge.
The Teen Lounge. It's very frustrating to me.
We actually, I think at the last meeting or the meeting before that, we did set up a committee with Scott and I endeavored to start that, and I sent an agenda out yesterday or the day before for us to get going, to develop something to come back to the council with so we could get agreement to then go to Saddleback Valley Unified District. But I think,
I like that.
Along with what you've said, it's important for us, after we decide, to then go back with these folks and involve them in the discussion as well, not just Saddleback.
It's really a comprehensive relationship that we're talking about here, because I think so many times we talk about A, B, C, D, those specific programs, and I think we've got to push for this.
All right. Is that a friendly amendment? Then,
Well, I think we're already doing that.
Okay. All right.
And the other one we can just do.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't need to.
I agree. Yeah, please, Mayor Pro Tem.
First, I'd like to say these programs do work. I wish that they had these programs when I was growing up, because we were latchkey kids at home and got into a lot of trouble. I believe that this will happen. I think that doing some strategic planning and really finding the right permanent home for the Boys and Girls Club, I think is really important. Doing a modular kind of denotes something that's going to be like a temporary scenario, but I'd love to see you guys have a rooted home in the city. The truth is seniors and children are our most at-risk groups, and we're building a senior center, so we obviously love our seniors. I think we should love our children just as much. I'm sure we can do something. Setting it for consideration for the big picture perspective of a 5-year plan locks you in, first of all, because we're obviously interested in your proposal. But I think that through the planning process, I think we can come up with something even better than what we're thinking of today. You have my full support. I think this is a great program, and I'll advocate for you however I can. But I think it's really important that we really look at the long-term big picture. Where can we give you guys a permanent home in our city? So I would support option 3 for that reason, but you guys have my full support.
So we talked a little bit about what cities should do. And I've talked about that a lot. I don't think that it's changed dramatically. I think that some of the things further down the priority list are the things that change, but public safety for me is always number 1. Roads, infrastructure is number 2. And then there's a lot of things that fall underneath that. But those 2 consume a significant part of our budget. When I look at how organizations like this or other nonprofits have come to cities and they ask for something like this, they typically ask for something in the millions of dollars. They want the city to support it. They want the city to fund it. In reading through the staff report and hearing from you all, that's not my understanding. My understanding is that you want to pay for it, you just need a location. And we're talking about a location that makes the most sense. Mention was made of the old Slater's 50/50 building. I think that's a horrible location for kids to spend time. It's a big giant concrete parking lot next to a freeway. I think a building in a park that the kids, almost all the kids that are going to attend this are going to be familiar with, that they're going to live around, that they're going to go to school around, probably makes more sense than anything. I think this is the ideal location for it. Is it temporary? I don't know. I've seen modular buildings up for decades. So do you want something better than that?
Orange County Animal Shelter.
Absolutely. Do you want something that's permanent? You want a bigger structure. Absolutely. But, this is something that's been talked about in this community for a long time. And, as was mentioned, Mr. Carter's been spending years. Mr. Anderson's been putting on bike rides to raise money for it. And lots of people in this community, members of the Kiwanis Club, they've been pouring their heart into trying to get something done. And I think their ask is actually really small. Now, does it set a certain precedent? I don't know. I'm not really sure. I mean, what happens when veterans of foreign wars or whatever? But what do they do in Laguna Beach? They're using 2 parks there. What do they do throughout the state of California? I mean, this is happening in various places. So, personally, I think there's a hybrid here because, I think the options just aren't good enough for me. Directing staff to negotiate an agreement sounds like very definitive. And I still do have some questions about, okay, we're going to have to move an electrical box, and we're going to have to move some, like, pumps or something, and there's some drainage, and I don't know what the costs are. So, directing you to negotiate an agreement without understanding what all of the costs are, that seems a little scary to me, because I don't know what that agreement means at this point. But, I think that it's probably a hybrid of, like, I want to direct you to negotiate an agreement, and I want to be talking about it at the, when we're discussing the budget from a capital improvement perspective. What kind of costs are we talking about in moving it? In what ways, can they help, or are they talking about building the parking lot and the building itself? I don't know. Those still are really unclear to me, and I don't think that there's something that we can just figure out going back and forth at the mic right now. So for me, it's a hybrid of 1 and 3. And so I'm going to make a substitute motion that we do exactly that we direct staff to begin discussion of negotiating an agreement with the Boys and Girls Club to redesign the park and the site and for a facility at the park, and that we get some of that information back at our budget workshop or five-year strategic plan, and we start moving. I think it's about time that we did something.
I support that.
And so, that's my secondary motion.
Yeah, that
my
was
substitute.
so that the staff will look at the cost of what it would entail for the Boys and Girls Clubs to be moved in there.
So for clarification, you'd like this in your July strategic planning workshop. You are not authorizing us to spend any money to do some conceptual engineering to get you more refined costs. You just want
rough costs,
like deal points defined, estimates that the staff could provide, but nothing where we're having consultants do more than that.
That's fine with me. I want to try to understand what they're planning to pay for, what we might potentially have to pay for, and are we talking about the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands, or the millions of dollars? And if I can just get a ballpark number before I tell you whether or not I think we should move forward with hiring engineering consultants and so forth, I think that would be the time. But like I said, I think that it's about time that we move forward. And for me, this site makes sense.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that, if you stumble and you can't, then don't come to us in July and say we couldn't figure it out. Come to us early and say, listen, we need $2,000 to get the estimate we need. Otherwise, we can't give you an exact figure.
And I think that probably falls within the city manager's authority of spending money. They don't need to come back to us for something that's small.
All right. So we're going to look into that and bring it back to us during the 5-year strategic plan. Guys, thank you so much. We're not against you guys, and it's just amazing to us here on the dais that we run the Kids Factory, the Teen Lounge, on site at all the elementary schools within the city of Lake Forest. And we bus the kids. We pay for the busing of the kids from Serrano Junior High. And there's a waiting list for these kids to be at the Teen Lounge and at the Kids Factory. And so obviously there's a need. And the rigidness that we're getting feedback from someone. There is a new superintendent, and I actually know her from Olivewood as a principal there. And so I'll be talking to her in the next few days. But whether we are in agreement with them or not, we as a city feel, as you know, that our kids are our future and that we don't want the kids running around causing problems. And the fact is, if we can make better citizens out of them through the Boys and Girls Clubs or the Kids Factory and help fit them into society, I think that it's all good. So with that, I'll call the vote, please. Thank you guys so much.
You know, before I vote, can I just make a comment, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah,
okay. Briefly, I think we should still try to talk with the school district and have this comprehensive, and I know, and part of that discussion is, too, I think it'd be interesting to know how many school districts partner with. I mean, we've got the president of the Orange County group or whatever of the Boys and Girls Club. So, I mean, you probably have these stats like on your fingertips. Not quite, but I can get but close. And just to reiterate, what I think what the sentiment is that nonprofit programs work best, and the government ones, I think, are the ones that without like saying our city, you know, a lot of government programs aren't as good. So, you know, our city staff, they're unique. So, but in general, government programs don't work anywhere near as well as nonprofit programs. So, again, I commend you. I want to help, and I think it's very important that you and your program succeed and thrive and help benefit kids in Lake Forest.
Okay, the motion been made, and we have two one current, but planning commissioners. You guys were involved with the OSA, and the amount of money that we've given Saddleback Unified School with the new development and them being so rigid is somewhat concerning to me. When there was agreements that they were supposed to help Lake Forest kids out with some of that money. Thank you, guys. Call the vote.
That motion passes unanimously. That takes us to agenda item 19, which also has 3 sub-items: the Civic Center project update, construction contract award for rough grading, contract award for geotechnical services, and the naming of the new Lake Forest Senior Center.
Okay, please bring it to Deputy City Manager.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Just a brief update on the Civic Center progress we'll give you tonight, and then we have some contracts attached that will start the project. So, groundbreaking ceremony, May 12th. City Clerk has, I hopefully, put it on everybody's calendar. It'll be a major milestone for the community. We will start grading the project site. So I hope everybody's excited about it. I hope everybody will show up and put your helmets and dig your shovels into the ground and get your pictures taken. What I want to show you I just have one PowerPoint slide. This is a camera we have put up on the building at the end of the cul-de-sac there. A business in Lake Forest has allowed us to put a camera up there. It takes a picture every 15 minutes. It's a time-lapse camera, and it has already started taking pictures. And like I said, it'll take a picture every 15 minutes, and we will have a time-lapse of the entire Civic Center from beginning to end. We will have this up in early May on our website, so the citizens can go on to the city's website, and without even coming down to the site, they can watch the site be built from beginning to end. So that's something exciting that everybody can watch.
Is that looking at Indian Ocean? Is that what you said?
That is the end of Indian Ocean and looking onto the site. The site's right there, right at the end of that road. To the left will be the parking deck structure, and the little hill on the right will be, a lot of that dirt will be pushed over to the left to fill in the valleys for the flat pad for the Civic Center.
And so that building on the left that you can see, is that part of that crane or that lift company?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
So before I forget, I'm not trying to hijack your presentation, but like I said earlier, I travel this path along Serrano Creek very often, and very often they have their lifts or cranes above the height of their wall. And there's two, I think, buildings there that kind of are kind of open air, lean. So I'm just hoping that we shade or, I don't know, mask, because you're going to be able to see that like from, it's a higher elevation, and as you're looking from the parking lot, you're going to see lifts, cranes, these open air buildings that have all this. Anyway,
we'll look into
that's just top of mind.
So
please proceed.
Okay, so groundbreaking May 12th. Attached to the staff report also is the rough grading contract that will begin shortly after groundbreaking, and the timeline on that is roughly May through August for the rough grading. Not at the same time, but when that finishes up, concurrently we'll have two more projects coming to you. That will be the street construction and utilities, wet and dry utilities, and the parking garage. And those timelines are the street constructions through December, and then the timeline on the parking garage is, the parking structure is August through February. And those are all tentative timelines. You know, weather can come into play. We do have 2 winters ahead of us as we build the Civic Center. And then, of course, the Civic Center campus will start in December 2017 and run through May 2019. About a 17-month schedule on the Civic Center itself. But what staff is asking you tonight is, and of course, back in March, you approved design development from Carrier Johnson, and they will have construction drawings finished by the end of summer. That'll lead us into the campus contracts. And then also attached to this report is we have the grading contract, as you see, and the budget appropriation for that grading contract, and then the geotechnical contract. And then we'd just like staff to move forward with this item and approve those contracts and approve the budget appropriation. And with that, I'll turn it over to the city manager if she has anything else further to say, or council comments.
There's a third item with this, and it's regarding a process to name the senior center. So I'd like to turn it over to Scott Wasserman, who will cover that with you.
Thank you, Deborah. Mr. Mayor, members of council, I don't have much to add other than the brief report that's before you. This is something I probably would not have brought before the council this early in the game, before the facility is opening. However, there's so much enthusiasm among the senior community for naming this facility that they're eager to get started. So what I've done is I've outlined the process. If council's amenable to having input from the seniors to name the facility, this is basically the process that we would follow. It's an organic process where we would start with the seniors themselves, work through the senior advisory board, pass some recommendations and some names up to the Parks Commission for their consideration, and then they would pass some names up to the City Council for your consideration.
I'd be amenable to that. The fact is that we got a very active group of seniors in Lake Forest, and we got a senior clubhouse that is a rocking place to come 3 days a week? 4 days a week, and parties for every special occasion. So, I think that would be a great idea to have them included in this.
I agree. I'll second.
So, Mayor, members, and
I'll
the
move
council.
all 3 items.
So we're going to move. We're going to do. We're going to make item number 19 A, B, C, all combined. And he's made the motion. I'll make the second. With any further discussion, please.
I just have a quick question. So, are there any parameters that we're working with respect to the naming? So,
Yes.
like I know Mission Viejos was named after an individual, and I know that we've got some policies that would preclude that and allow things in certain ways. And I think that it's been the preference of councils for a long time that buildings aren't named after people. So I just wanted to see what parameters they have.
That is correct, and that's exactly how we would start. We would let them know that that wouldn't be an option to name the facility after a person.
Great. That's all I needed to know.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we got a first and a second. Please cast your votes.
And I just want to mention, too, that for the audience's benefit, we received 9 different bids for item 19A, and that's a true testament to the hard work of staff reaching out to the number of vendors. And 3 of them were actually below the engineer's estimate, which I think I mean, you're kind of happy. We have a policy that says we try to aim for at least 3 bids, and staff did such a tremendous job that they got 3 bids that were underneath the engineer's estimate. So, great job.
Yeah, thank you guys. That was a great job, and job well done. Thank you. Cast your votes, please.
That motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
the staff would like to pull item 20 from the discussion calendar.
Okay. Is there anybody for public comment on that?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
Do they want to hold till it comes back, or do they want them to do it now?
The speakers are Tom Cagley, followed by Vincent Burke.
Okay, we're just tabling it for tonight. We're going to bring it back. It's something that we're working on. Is that a fair way to say that?
Mayor and members of the council, it would be our intention to bring this to the May 2nd council meeting.
Okay, please. Okay. So back at May 2nd. So they'll have their opportunity at May 2nd.
Unless they want to say it now.
If you guys, did I get an objection to that, or? I'm making the offer. May 2nd. Okay. Thank you. Okay. See, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Agenda item 21, campaign finance regulations, submitted by City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, council members, this item provides a general overview of the laws governing local campaign finance regulation and the tools available to the city in this regard. Case law that interprets the First Amendment generally holds that individuals have a constitutional right of free speech and association to contribute to political campaigns. Thus, any local regulation of campaign finance must be tailored to the rules created by case law. The staff report addresses 3 general areas of regulation: campaign contribution limits, expenditure limits, and reporting requirements. In the interest of brevity, I will review what a city can and cannot regulate pursuant to constitutional case law. A city may impose contribution limits on city council candidates and their controlled committees, though there is no bright line rule regarding appropriate contribution limits. A city may not impose limits on contributions to ballot measure committees, and a city may not impose limits on contributions to independent committees making independent expenditures. Finally, a city may not impose limits on campaign expenditures. A city may impose reporting requirements on local candidates and committees. As noted at a prior council meeting, the City of Los Angeles has a robust campaign finance regulatory scheme. However, due to its size and the fact that LA is a charter city, many of LA's regulations have limited applicability to the city. In contrast, several Orange County cities have adopted campaign finance regulations, including contribution limits and reporting requirements. Included among these cities are Dana Point, Fountain Valley, Irvine, and Laguna Niguel, just to name a few.
Can you hold on? Guys, can you please come to the crowd? It's affecting this listening up here. Thank you. Go ahead.
So that actually concludes staff's presentation. Happy to answer any questions or to go into any further detail for the council.
Public speakers, please.
Kristen Eldred, followed by Michelle Antonisi.
Good evening.
Good evening. Kristen Eldred, resident since 1999. I'm really pleased and encouraged that the topic of campaign contributions is once before the council again. I strongly urge the council to vote for campaign contribution limits of $500 or less. 13 cities in Orange County have campaign contribution limits, and the packet I sent to you electronically earlier today and that you have with you, those did get passed out, right? Okay. It provides details regarding 3 of our neighboring cities. Irvine adopted limits in 1997, and their limit in 2016 was $490. Laguna Beach adopted limits in 2007, and their limit is a mere $250. I also provided details regarding Laguna Woods, and they adopted limits in 2008, and their limit is $360. Adopting campaign contribution restrictions, I believe, benefits the citizens of Lake Forest, the council members, and the city budget. The last recall cost close to $84,000 for the city, so that's something that's very important to note. There's 4 main reasons, I think, to support the contribution limits. Number 1, it minimizes influence and perceived influence by special interest groups in our city. Number 2, it protects the city council members from accusations of corruption. 3, it improves our fiscal impact on city finances by reducing or at least eliminating costly recall campaigns. And 4, to me, the most important reason of all, it promotes wider citizen participation in the local political process. Lower campaign contribution limits tend to level the playing field and allow average citizens to offer themselves up for public service. So I'm new to this. You just saw me appear for the first time a few council meetings ago. But I can tell you that in the 4 council meetings that I have attended, it's clear to me that if our wonderful city had adopted campaign contribution limits earlier, that many of the hot topics and citizen complaints that come up week after week would have no merit because the specter of financial influence would be removed. At $8,448 a year, City Council is not a job one seeks for the pay. Therefore, I think it is important that we protect the reputation of those serving the public, and adopting campaign limits does just that. Our city is fiscally sound, and that's one of the things I particularly appreciate. You can see our money going back into our community. So spending money on recalls wastes our community's resources. Campaign finance restrictions greatly reduce the probability and frequency of recalls.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and just one last statement.
Please finish your thought.
Our city can only benefit from leveling the financial playing field so that citizens with a desire to serve the community they love can do just that. So I strongly urge you to vote for that.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Michelle Antonisi.
Good evening, Michelle.
Good evening. I'm a Lake Forest resident, and I'm here to ask you to vote for campaign contributions. I didn't do as much research, but $500 seems like a reasonable limit to me. I'm sure it's difficult to vote for something that will make fundraising even, harder and potentially more laborious, but I urge you to do it because it's the right thing to do. First, large donations erode the public trust and create the perception of favoritism, and regardless of the reality, that perception is damaging. Second, if money really is speech, not having limits drowns out the voices of ordinary citizens who can't afford to make the large campaign contributions that, well-off or, the more wealthy are able to do. So I think that leveling that playing field creates a more robust democracy, and I would urge you to support that and vote for limits.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any further?
There are no further requests.
Okay, bring it back to council.
I have a question for the attorney. In your discussion, you didn't talk about limiting campaign contributions from companies that do business with the city. Is that something we can do?
Mr. Mayor, Council, it's a good question. The same rules that apply to individuals apply to companies. There was a Supreme Court case a few years back, the Citizens United case, that essentially gave equal status to companies and individuals. So the exact same rules apply.
But the same limits would be applied to companies or individuals?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Ralston?
I just had a question.
Kind of following in on that, specifically if a company is intending on doing business with the city and they donate to someone's campaign, is there a way to write in an ordinance that says if a company donates to a political campaign, that they cannot do business with the city for X amount of months or X amount of years, so that it limits the possibility of perceived corruption?
It's a good question, Mr. Mayor, council members. There is no law right now that would permit a city to prohibit a business from doing business with the city. Interestingly, there's something called the Levine Act that applies to appointed individuals, LAFCO commissioners, planning commissioners who eventually run for council. The Levine Act actually prohibits an individual from voting on a permit, a license, et cetera, for a company who gave that individual a contribution of X amount or more in the 12 months preceding. Importantly, the company isn't banned from asking for the permit or license. The individual can't act. Now, that only applies to appointed individuals, not to council members. There's nothing similar to apply to council members.
Thank you.
And Mayor and Council, I do apologize. There was one additional speaker.
Okay.
If you,
Oh, please.
okay. Tom Cagley.
Good evening, Your Honor, Mayor Pro Tem.
Good evening.
Council members. I'm Tom Cagley, I live in Lake Forest. I certainly support proposed campaign finance regulations. I'm not really certain that the City of Los Angeles, in the report, is the gold standard for campaign finance, but that's a subject for another time. I may have understood part of this report, but it appears there are a few holes in this proposed reform. First, while cities may have chosen not to impose limits on contributions for independent committees, there does not appear to be any compelling legal reason not to, and I would argue that there should be. There are too many instances where money from special interests can be laundered through a PAC to benefit one or more candidates. Why should the association or major contractors be able to influence votes through significant campaign contributions? I know many of you will protest your vote cannot be bought, and that's probably true, but the appearance is that it can be. Thus, that loophole should be closed. Other aspects of this proposed reform concern single contribution. I think $500 is a reasonable figure for our level of government. However, I do not see anything about bundlers. Those individuals who bundle money from many contributors then pass it through a committee to support a candidate. Should bundlers be also prohibited, at least have limitations? Finally, loans. Again, I may not have understood the language or the intent, but many candidates loan themselves money to kickstart a campaign. Upfront money just for getting your name on the ballot, Secretary of State ID, paying for the ballot insert. All this for a novice candidate may necessitate a personal loan in excess of $500. I assume the intent is to keep wealthy candidates from buying an election by loaning themselves tens of thousands of dollars. Perhaps a $5,000 or $10,000 limit on loan would be sufficient. Bottom line, and I'm going quickly because we've been here a long time. Bottom line, I would like to see limits on PACs, unions, and corporations, increase the loan amount from candidates. Thank you for your attention and consideration.
Thank you.
Just to clarify what Tom was saying, unfortunately, there are current laws that say that we cannot we can't limit external campaign, it's only direct contributors to campaigns that we can affect, not PACs and other things, correct?
Mr. Mayor, Council, the City of Irvine actually had an ordinance that limited contributions to independent committees. That was challenged by the Lincoln Club of Orange County. There was a case, Lincoln Club versus City of Irvine, that holds that is not permissible. So Lake Forest would be limited to direct contributions to candidates and candidate-controlled committees.
So when you wanted to bring this up, I was supportive of talking about it again, but I explained that my position really hasn't changed. I agree that there's a lot of money that gets spent in elections. In some elections, it's an obscene amount. But legally, there isn't much that we can do. Well, we really can't do anything to preclude PACs. We can't do anything to preclude the spending on ballot measures. What we can preclude is or we can set a limit for a certain amount in a city. And I think that with all good intentions that has, it creates a consequence that none of us want. And what that does is it drives the contributions into the dark. it drives them into these PACs. It drives them into all the loopholes that are out there. Mr. Cagley mentioned, LA might not be the gold standard. As was mentioned, you can't limit ballot measures. There are candidates who are supportive of ballot measures where they send out mail. Just in this last election cycle in March, they put up campaign signs. They did television commercials saying, such and such candidate supports measure X, right? So they're promoting themselves, but it's the ballot measure that's paying for the advertisement, right? So they get this unintended benefit that was clearly intended. They're doing a commercial for themselves, but there's no limit on the ballot measure. So even though they can only receive, I can't remember what it is, but like $1,100 or something like that is their maximum, they can get $50,000 from one individual to the ballot measure and then go out and do a commercial with their picture on it, with their name saying, vote for this measure. And the subliminal message there is, and vote for me too for city council, mayor, whatever. That's my real concern. I mean, if it were up to me, I was the only Supreme Court justice. I probably wouldn't even have a limit, but I would require that all of it had to go on the candidates' filing reports, so for us 460s, and that those had to be reported more frequently so that all could see who was supporting that candidate. The candidate needs to own it. But in this case, well, that's not the way it works. If we start to try to look at all of these ways in which we can try to close all the loopholes there, and can we keep the businesses from being able to contribute, and if they don't, they can't get a contract. Well, that's not legal. We might say, well, if we could do that, maybe it would just push it into the dark and they donate to PACs, so they can't donate to PACs, right? And if they donate to a PAC, how would we ever know? We might not find out. But if that PAC supports a specific candidate, then maybe that candidate, once they're elected, can't vote on the item. So, if I want to make sure that someone couldn't vote because I felt like they were going to vote against me, I might do a $100 independent expenditure to support that person that was going to oppose me. Then they have to recuse themselves from the vote, right? I mean, with everything that you try to create, there's all these loopholes out there that, someone will always try to find that wants to find a way to support a candidate. If you couldn't donate money directly or you couldn't send out mail, they just hire a bunch of people to walk door to door in a community, right? They're always going to find the loophole. I think the key for us is that all the things that we want to do, we legally can't do. And the things that we can do, if we were to put a limit in, if it was $500 or less, it's not going to keep the donations from coming. They're just going to come in a different way, in a dark way. They're going to come through a PAC or they're going to come through a ballot measure, and then the transparency is not going to be there. The candidate can say, honestly or not, that they had nothing to do with it. There was one of our former council members that just left in November. When he was first elected, there were independent expenditures on his behalf. And he liked to say, I knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about it. They were just supporting me. Well, you couldn't stop it, right? So that's going to happen, and there's only so much that we can do. We can't, I guess we could all publicly denounce independent expenditures that were spent on our behalf, but most of us, whether it's some organization that's sending out an email saying support this person or that person, or an organization or a group that's spending money to put out mail saying support this person or that person, we're just happy that somebody's out there supporting us most of the time. So I don't think that limits are a good thing from a city perspective. I know they have really good intentions, but I think that the negative is that the donations will still come, but now you won't be able to see them. They won't be transparent. They won't be on your reports. They're going to be on some political action committee's reports where they funded 15 different candidates, and how much of that went to one of us, and how much of it went to a candidate in Fullerton and a candidate in Oakland, and you can't figure it out anymore. It becomes that much more challenging. I want it to be as transparent as it possibly can. I wish everyone that supported me directly, and that you saw it on all my reports and you knew exactly who was supporting me. But there are some people that supported my own candidacy in both election cycles that didn't donate to me directly. They spent their own money in their own way. I didn't know it. They're not legally allowed to talk to me. And so I had no clue of what was happening until I got a phone call, or I got something in the mail with my picture on it, or whatever it might have been. So, that's the reason. It's not that I don't understand where everyone's coming from. I mean, sometimes the cost of an election in Lake Forest has just grown astronomically, right? But if we put these limits in place, I don't think it's going to change. Just the transparency aspect will become diminished, because it'll no longer, those amounts right now that are going to us directly will no longer go to us directly. They'll just get funneled through PACs and ballot measures or whatever there might be there. So that's the reason why, I oppose limits. It's not that I oppose the intention. It's just I don't think that we can control the fact that contributions will continue to exist, and I want them to be as transparent as possible. So I would rather that those dollars, as much as possible, come directly to the candidate so that it shows up on their reports, and less that, even though I can't control it, less that it goes through independent expenditure committees. So that's my thoughts.
And this is just a rehash. I mean, we had the same exact conversation almost 2 years ago. So, I'm going to say exactly what I said. But before, I don't even know if you know this, Mr. Councilman Robinson, but I thought you might know, like City of Irvine, weren't there, or maybe Mr. City Attorney, weren't there like millions of dollars spent in the IEs and the actual amounts going through campaigns were like in the thousands. I mean, it was almost like 100 times difference, or something like that, 50 to something like that.
The mayor's races for the last 3 or 4 election cycles have combined approached $1 million, with roughly, under $500 limits. So, and when you look at how much is directly going to the candidates, it's like 10% of that. The other 90% is all dark. It's in these independent expenditure committees, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. I'd rather that it was in the light and it was on the reports. I'm speaking to that exact example. We voted for term limits in town. I think all of us, support them in one form or another. I'm not. But term limits nonetheless. Someone has to step off the council no matter what. But my point though is that in Irvine, a term limits organization from Virginia, and this was all over the Orange County Register, spent 6 figures 2 years ago in the Irvine mayor's race and the council races. Now, what's an organization in Virginia doing spending money in Irvine? And they already have term limits, right? And so that's just like one of those examples that's out there. So, and it might have been, it was either 2 or 4 years, but, the article's out there, you can find it. And that's kind of the point that I'm making, is that I don't know if they ever did the research to find out who funded into that group that funded into this group, but I'd just much rather that it was out in the light.
So the comment that I made the last time was that I do not have the wherewithal to personally fund my campaign. And so, the campaigns, some of the folks, I'll just go ahead and say it. Councilman Gardner, you funded almost 100% of your campaign. I don't, you have a nice house on a lake. I don't. You've got a nice sports car. I have a Toyota Camry. If you want the little guy to be able to run, and not the guy who lives on the lake who self-funded his campaign, this is your what this does is it limits campaign funding, but it also helps the guy with a lot of money. We had, Colonel Kegley come. He lives on the lake. He financed his campaign. These types of regulations will never stop wealthy folks from self-funding their campaign. There's no limits on them. All it does is affect the little guy, and he doesn't have, or she, the ability to run a campaign because we're not wealthy. So to me, I think of this, in addition to what Councilman Robinson's saying, is these kind of campaign finance laws are helping the wealthy and not the little guy. And if you just want wealthy council members and members of Congress and county supervisors, those are the ones that will benefit from these types of campaign finance or reforms.
If you'll allow the wealthiest member of the council to speak. I am the wealthiest member up here. My net worth, I'm sure, far exceeds anybody up here, probably anybody in the room.
You're also the humblest, too.
No, just since you raised the issue. On the other hand, I spent less money getting elected than any of those guys. I spent a fifth of what they spent. With all the money I have, I spent $10,000 to get elected. Maybe it was $11,000. I spent 10 of the 11 I spent. That's how much I spent. My good friend here spent $50,000.
Who?
You.
No.
Last election?
No, you may be looking
How
farther
much?
down the road.
No, he's 30. You're 50.
No, I was 30.
When Scott gives you a number, you gotta. My impression is 50, 30, and they got independent expenditures on them as well. I didn't. So, wealth, whether you have it or not, it's got nothing to do with how much you spent. Of the $11,000 I spent, $10,000 of it was my own money. And again, these are my figures, but by my figures, of the $50,000 he spent, none of that was his money. It was all special interest money. And again, by my figures, the $30,000 he spent, apart from the $2,000 he loaned himself and got back, was all somebody else's money. So it's got nothing to do with the amount of money you have. It's got who do you owe. I owe nobody. I think Bob gave me some money, and then when he wanted to run for vector control, I gave it back to him. I said, I can't vote on you. I wrote you a check for what you gave me. I said, I can't vote for you one way or the other. I either have to recuse myself or I have to give you back the money. So that's the answer to Mr. Hamilton's remarks. As far as Mr. Robinson, it's true. Money will flow regardless of the steps we take. Just like people break the law, even though we have laws about murder, people still murder. We have laws, don't go through red lights, they still go through red lights. Putting campaign limits will not stop all the money. It may not even stop most of the money, but it will stop some of the money. Some people don't hang around with PACs. Some companies won't do that. So it will stop some of it. So there's no reason not to do it. It's certainly not going to increase the money, and it, more importantly, will eliminate some of the money. There's an issue Mr. Robinson normally raises here that I did some homework for, and he didn't raise it tonight. So I'm going to have to raise it for him, and then I'm going to have to answer. He likes to say that, actually all three of the people who take money like to say that the people give them the money because of who they are. They like their politics. They like the way they vote. And it's got nothing to do, they're not buying my vote. They just like the way I vote. And that's why they give me money. So for my friend Scott here, Waste Management liked him a lot, used to give him $1,000 until they no longer had a city contract. And somehow they stopped liking you. Because there was no longer there. And but CR&R, who have the contract, now they like him. And I'm not picking on Scott. I could point this out as easily as everybody else. In other words, Waste Management, they're not giving you money because they like you, or they're giving you the money for the vote. That's what the money's for. And even if they're not, even if you want to fool yourselves or fool us by claiming that that's what you think is going on, it's the perception. It's the perception. It may not be true. You may not know who gives you this money, and you may not vote, although 100% of your votes fall in that direction, so it looks like you know who's giving you the money. But let's assume for a minute you don't. It's the perception that that's the way it's in. So I'd say let's do campaign finance limitations, not because it's going to be effective 100% or 50%, but because it's the right thing to do. And then I'm going to suggest we do it $250, and both for individuals and for companies doing business with the city. So, and in both cases, not because it will stop the flow of money, it won't stop the flow of money, not because some money won't flow into those areas, that they will, but it's the right thing for us to do.
I'll second that.
Okay, further discussion?
Yeah, you love saying that 100%. And even tonight, I had a donor, and I voted against them. So, even tonight. No, and it's not the first time for everything. There's been other situations that folks have donated, and I have not voted in favor of those. You can go figure it out, but it's not true. We have in another falsehood is that mine was not 30,000, it was 22,000. But on my campaign, I sent out one mailer. One mailer that I've mailed out. I was not on 8 different mailers like yourself. So I'm not sure how, for $10,000, you were able to get on 8 different mailers. I paid for one mailer, reported the correct amount on my Form 460, but somehow you got on 8 different ones. I don't know how that works. You can say you spent $10,000. That's, I'll take your word for it, but I just don't understand how you got on 8 different mailers.
Let me explain it to you, but I won't explain it to you too well because I don't want you to copy my methods. But it's called targeted mailing. It's called demographic research. We were in the closed session. I told you I did the analysis that God knows how much the city spent for doing it. I did that in about 3 hours, and I didn't charge the city a cent. The city spent thousands and thousands of dollars to get the same answer because I know research. I can do the data, and I can send targeted mailings in some cases as low as 500. And in fact, I believe 10 mailings I sent, not just 8, but they were targeted. And that's how I'm able to do that.
But to clarify, we're not talking about how many flyers you can send out limiting campaign contributions. That flyers have nothing to do with it. We're talking about dollars here, not who sent how many flyers. So I don't know why we're even discussing this.
No, I'm just responding to his inane comment.
Well, and it's not inane because you reported on your 460 that I think it was like either $6,000 or $7,000, but you actually only sent one mailer out in your name. So I don't know how you get on another, I guess, 9 mailers for $3,000. It just
all right. There has been a motion in a second. And back to clarification. I voted against Waste Management, even though they were a donor of mine, because there was a better contract out there. And the fact is, as a civil servant, we owe it to do what's best for the citizens. And so the fact is that whether I get a donation from Waste Management or CR&R, if the time feels that there's a better contract out there, I will always make the choice for the contract. So
you did not vote against Waste Management.
I did vote against Waste Management.
Waste Management was not a client in that vote. Waste Management was eliminated from that vote. The only vote you had on that was CR&R.
There was 2 vendors on the there was 2 vendors still on viability on the vote. Call the vote. All.
The vote is 250 individuals and 250 companies.
And for clarification, it would be to direct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance enacting these limitations, correct? Okay. That motion fails with Councilmember Robinson, Councilmember Hamilton, and Mayor Voights opposed.
Sure. That brings us to operating hours.
We have a short presentation from the city clerk.
Mayor and Council, this was placed on the agenda with minority consensus from the February 21st meeting regarding City Hall operating hours at the request of Councilmember Basil and the assent of Councilmember Gardner.
Okay.
What I'd like to propose, and it will be, I'd like to see this come up in the budget workshop so that we can actually make a plan to maybe start this effective July 1st. But what I'd like to see is what would be most effective for staff. I certainly don't want to change. If they like working the 9-hour days, I have no problem. However you guys want to work it out, all I care about is that we have somebody scheduled every Friday so that the city is open to the residents every day of the work week. That's my only request. However, you decide to do that, I'll leave that up to your discretion, but that's my only request.
City Clerk, is there any topic on your guys' side?
This is minority consensus, so there was no staff work specifically done for this. I did ask the department heads to be prepared to answer questions, should you have them, about the impact on their operation if we were to be open 5 days a week. But beyond that, we have not prepared anything.
Well, then, as city manager, what is your take on this? I mean, what are our operating hours right now? And explain to us how we work.
Okay, right now we are open on what's called a 980 schedule. So that means we are working the staff is working 80 hours within 9 working days. And so the way we split the time is the Friday is we're open for 8 hours, and 4 of those hours are in one pay period and 4 hours are in another pay period. And so that's how you're getting 80 hours in a pay period. So that's kind of insider minutia, but for the public's sake, we are open from 8 to 6. We're open 5 days a week, 1 week, and then the following week we're open 4 days, and we're closed on the Friday. If we were to go to being open every Friday, your options would be to simply switch the hours from 8 to 5. I think with that one, employees would have some concern with that because many of them have their child care and other schedules are already planned around that 980 work week. The other option would be to have us work a split schedule where half of the staff is here on one Friday and the other half is here the other Friday. And so Monday through Thursday, the entire staff is working, and then on those Fridays, we would be split. Many cities run that way. There would be some costs added to that because your building counter, for example, would be open 44 hours a week, 44 hours, and so we would have to have some hard costs, but it's not significant. And we could certainly put those together for you if you'd like to see them during the budget workshop.
So during the budget workshop, maybe something else that you could come to us with is where a lot of the resident interaction occurs, because I think that's specifically what we're talking about. So, I think that we have a lot of staff that aren't necessarily, they're never interacting directly with the residents. And, what I'm hearing is probably the city clerk's office with things like passports and, it's kind of like a front line, and so is there someone there? I know from a safety perspective, it might be a challenge having one person there, so you have to figure some of those sorts of things out. And then, the planning desk as well, or the planning office there, that room. And you were saying, we're a contract city, so a lot of those employees are contract employees. I would assume that there might need to be a city employee who's in some way supervising or something
Right.
like that. So that's what I would expect. But, a lot of back office type functions that aren't necessarily interacting with residents, I don't know that would necessarily make sense. So, I'm hoping that we're not talking about anything, significant. I don't think it needs to be a 50-50. I think it's more of a hybrid, like 90-10 kind of thing.
Yes.
And, so that's, if that's what you all are discussing, talking about this from a broader perspective, And I know that we're already headed that way, especially with our new Civic Center and kind of changing staffing models and things like that. But I think residents are continuing to expect out of everyone who provides products or services from them kind of a 24-hour availability, 24-hour access. And that's not always people, but it's technology that gives them the opportunity to extract information. It gives them some way of reporting something and knowing that that's going to the right individual. I know that some of our contractors do have emergency on-call sorts of things. You see something that's unsafe out in the roadway or whatever it might be, and having those abilities from a technological standpoint to report that and know that someone's going to be acting on it immediately, and that it's not there's a person sitting in the public works office at 2 o'clock in the morning just waiting for the phone to ring, playing solitaire, if that even exists on laptops anymore. And but I think that continues to be a desire that we all have in the private sector, and if it hasn't already completely permeated the public sector, it will over time. And so I just want to continue to challenge us to look at those technological advancements that'll give residents those opportunities.
I like that idea. I think that's even better than just give us 10 days. If you could come up with a way that, the service is still provided and people could be doing it at home and Skyping and things like that, why not reach for that next level than just I think that's more important than just the 5 days. Good idea.
Yeah, and really what I'm specifically talking about, even with the contracts that we were looking at, tonight, there's on-call emergency services, things like that. So, I don't want Tom to have to get a cell phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning and then have to call a contractor. But my hope would be that we've got a way for a resident to report something, and then somehow that can go through a technological filter and it gets to the contractor so that those on-call emergency people can respond without Tom having to be woken up in the middle of the night or one of his staff. And, I know that we're going to be getting there over time, so it's just continuing to identify those opportunities that are out there because, again, that's what we all expect from the private sector. It's a lot different because, hey, we try to be really lean here, and if we were a full-service city, we'd probably have people, those on-call emergency type things would be city employees, but they're not. They're contractors. So how do we reach out to that? I've had occasions, it's been a few years, probably 3 or 4, but it was either a holiday or a Sunday, and I called Tom up and I said, the sprinklers have been running at a park for like the last 5 hours, right? And, I drove by once and I noticed it. I drove by again and it's flooding in the park, right? So who do I call? Even I don't know who to call. I mean, Tom's the guy that I call. He answers the phone on his day off or a holiday, and so, but wouldn't it be great, though, if you could send that email, right? There was a way of doing that through a web-based system or something like that so that Tom doesn't even have to get the call. In fact, if I even remember, you were like on a camping trip or something like that. He was out of the area, and he was trying to deal with it from his cell phone, and he did an admirable job. But, what if I couldn't have got a hold of him? What would I do next? Am I going to call the sheriff's department? Call the city manager? Yeah. It is. And, I think that it's something that's going to develop in more and more, over time. So what we come up with, over the next 6 months, it's going to look vastly different 5 years from now. We're going to be like, wow, I can't believe that we can do this. So, and we might not even say, wow, it's just, we just look at our phone and that's the way it's always been, even though that new app just popped up 6 months ago or that new feature to the app or whatever. So just more broad discussion in all this, but I thought it was an appropriate time to bring it up.
So is there an official motion?
So I'll make a motion that we go ahead and put this to the budget workshop meetings for you to figure out what would be best suited for the face-to-face interactions for the residents, for the city staff to be available 5 days a week.
I'll second that, but I think there is a value to our employees who are in here. I think the citizens and the communities have grown accustomed to you guys being closed every other Friday. So the fact that the value that it might bring back to us might be minimal because people aren't aware that they're open. So, and the fact that the resources aren't there in full force neither. So the fact that they have that paid employee there on a day where in the past we've had it off, and I think that we don't. We're very fortunate to have our employees aren't unionized. They enjoy working for the City of Lake Forest, and some of the perks of working for Lake Forest is having that every other Friday off. So those are some of the perks that we have to reward our workers here in Lake Forest who do such a great job for us. And so I'm leery. You bring it back to us, but I like the way we have it because the fact is I think that it rewards our employees for the good job they do. And I appreciate it when people like working where they work. So when our employees are happy, we're happy. So,
and just for clarification, I think I think the intent of your request is just to bring it back as an option, right?
Yes.
So I think that's okay.
All right.
Just to add to what Scott said, it wouldn't harm us for you to say, and 30 or 40% of the people would like that, or 90% of the people are opposed to it. So give us that feedback too.
Yeah, we very much appreciate our staff, and so tell them that we appreciate them, and we want them to be happy because we're happy when they're happy. So thank you. That brings us to City Manager's
A vote, please.
No, please. Yeah, cast a vote. I'm pushing the button. I forgot to call it. Cast your votes.
Just for you to bring back an option? Okay.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay, that brings us to City Manager's report.
This is my gentle reminder that before we get into council comments, we have quite a list of items that the council would like to discuss at upcoming meetings. I believe it's over 20. So I'd just like to throw out there that if we are going to be adding more items, that there may be a delay, and I may be sending or speaking to you about possibly having a council workshop so we could get through some of these items that are logical to group together. That concludes my report.
Oh, the wonderful comments you have, Mr. City Manager. That brings us to Councilman Gardner. Keep your book closed.
That comment was directed right to me. Okay, I won't do this one, I won't do that one, I won't do that one. Okay, so I won't add to the list. But let me say, Saturday, the 22nd, it was mentioned Fort Kiwanis needs help planting 600 plants in Serrano Creek, so please come by there. On the 24th, which is Monday, we have the Pet Adoption Center that's going to open up at 5:30 over in the Muirland Shopping Center. On the 28th, I believe it's here, we have the Business Smart workshop, and at 1:30, we have a ribbon cutting for Performance Academy. And on Saturday at 9 a.m., I believe it's this room, but it might be the sports bar, we have the Special Needs Resource Fair, and our special needs program is probably the best in the county. We have really stoked that up and increased that. It's really a model for everybody else in the city. And just in closing, I want to thank Deborah and Keith and the staff for filling in during this interim since Bob Dunnick left over that 4 months period. We negotiating now a new city manager who may come on board, who knows how soon, but they've done a terrific job, and the city, I believe, is running better than it ever has before, and they did that with less staff. You have people down, and everybody has stepped up and done a marvelous job, so thank you very much.
Councilman Hamilton.
I'd agree with that, too. I almost think to just kind of elaborate a little bit more on Deborah's comment, I almost think we should consider, this is going to sound so funny, but agendizing how we agendize or how we prioritize things on the agenda. I mean, just off the top of my head, I almost think, something that affects residents, that should be kind of at the top of the list. If it's, hey, do we talk, if it's a city council policy and it's like when we talk, during the council meeting, or I don't know, it seems like some of those types of things, although important, might kind of fall down to the bottom, and I almost think once we get to a certain point, those might just hang out there for a while until we get to them. So I'd like to agendize how we prioritize our list, because I've got a huge list here. I've got 25 items on my list.
Oh, please keep that.
Okay, and they're all. And what I've been doing is I've been holding on to them because kind of what we've always been told is let's wait until the budget, because we bring up the budget. But I don't think I think we're so easily, hey, I got this new idea, I got to agendize it, and the people who are agendizing things are kind of skipping ahead of the line when we are supposed to really be, waiting until the annual budget process. So, so that's my story. I will do one, and I think I'll do another one. Well, I guess I need consensus on that. And I'd like to be the first. I'd like to skip to the top.
I have to give consensus to that.
I'd like to skip to the top so that we can actually get through the list.
I'll support that one, too.
Was that 2 or 3?
I'll support
That was 3.
All right. I'll just do one more.
Don't get feeling good about this.
Yeah, I know. I'll do one more.
Look at how good Jim was. The restraint. He was biting his tongue.
I think we have a policy at our sports park that groups, I'll just say it this way. I'm a member at Saddleback Church, and they wanted to use the sports park for an Easter service. And I don't think it would affect anyone. I don't think it would affect, folks. There wasn't going to be a rock and roll band at 5 in the morning. And there's been it's not just that. There's other groups that want to use the sports park. And so I think it's important that we examine the noise policy. And so we allow amplified sound for the city. A bunch of our events, we have, bands, we've got loud music, and I don't necessarily think it affects, again, the neighbors. Have we had any complaints ever on any of our city events that have been amplified? I'm putting you on the spot there.
Not many. Nothing
Okay.
significant.
So, I think something to do similar to the policy we have for using the sports park buildings and nonprofits. I think I'd like to agendize something to the effect of the noise item and nonprofit groups and things in Lake Forest using the sports park.
I'm going to make a recommendation, so I'm going to support, but make a recommendation that rather than bring that to a council agenda, let's bring it to the Park and Recs agenda with some specific direction being noise and whatever else you want to add, so it doesn't add to our agenda. And I know there's sometimes tends to be a little bit shorter than ours, right?
And I'll recommend that too. But I'd like to add that we have a sports park. May I please, or should I wait till mine? Can we add on this later? Or should I go now?
Go ahead. You're still on.
Okay. Andrew Hamilton makes a good point. The fact that we have a facility, it's a public facility at the sports park, and I'm an advocate for Lake Forest, and the fact that our Lake Forest hotels, and especially at the east end of our thing, Provenance, the Courtyard, their weekend traffic is low, and so the weekday they're filled. But I'd like to see our sports park go out there and seek out tournaments. They allow the club tournaments, whether it be the soccer tournaments or adult softball, Little League softball tournaments, and bring in some of these tournaments, these club tournaments, because right now you guys utilize it for AYSO and that, which it's because it's community park, but the fact is the revenue that would come in because of the people coming in for our restaurants on our overnight stay during these tournaments would be huge. And so I'd like to have that go back. Thank you.
And so I'd support that as long as it went to the Parks
Yes.
and Rec Commission.
That's my attitude. That's on your list, right?
Mr. Mayor, if we could just, we have consensus?
Yeah.
Let's
Yes.
move on.
Okay. Councilman Robinson.
I don't know exactly what we need, but I mentioned earlier about, having us do, say, a quarterly report to start with. I think, not adding it too much, but giving us the opportunity. We could do it in council comments, maybe, but maybe giving a little bit longer council comment for that particular, individual, and we could just pick a different one each meeting. I don't know what you all think about that, but,
I think it's a good idea.
So, would we need to agendize that to discuss it, or?
Mr. Mayor, council members, AB 1234 actually currently requires council members at council comment to discuss what they've done in this regard between meetings. The council could also agendize quarterly a more official report pursuant to an agenda item.
Okay.
So,
Then here would be a recommendation, and I don't know that we would need to agendize this. Okay, but let me make this recommendation, that whoever is slated to lead the Pledge of Allegiance becomes the one in council comments to do a report on whatever agency they're working on. That way, it spreads it out. We don't have all 5 of us doing it one meeting and council comments go forever. And it's already scheduled in some way. So,
That sounds good to
what do you
me.
think?
Yeah.
That's a good
Okay.
idea.
All right.
As long as we keep each other accountable.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Basil.
Don't forget.
So over these last couple of months, I've had a big learning curve being new to the council, but I have to say that I've seen in just a short time a huge culture shift with staff. Even though you guys have, been leaner, missing a few critical people, you guys have been very efficient, very responsive. You guys are like the lean, mean dream team, doing a great job. I just want you to know how much I've appreciated how much you guys have worked with me to help get me up to speed. I never feel like I'm bothering anybody. My questions get answered, even though sometimes they can be frivolous because I'm still learning. You guys never make me feel like I can't ask those questions. So I appreciate it. And during the transition, Deborah, you have done an amazing job. So I just want to say thank you for that. And I'll take your advice, and I won't recommend anything else tonight. But I do have about 25 items on my CIP and operating, but you and I have been working on that. So the thing that I would like to see, just as a reminder from the last meeting, that if we can just have a quick discussion about addressing residents right after they speak, instead of waiting to the end of, that is on the next, okay, I thought it was coming up for this meeting. For some reason, it didn't show up. Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Good night.
Okay, I too concur. Our staff's done a marvelous job. We've never missed a lick. We had a city manager for 21 years, and you guys have stepped up and kept the city functioning as good as ever. So thank you guys. And on that note, on city vector control, mosquito awareness week is April 16th through the 22nd. Orange County focuses on prevention and early intervention. The fact is that in Orange County, they've actually, in the last 2 years, the Aedes mosquitoes, the tiger stripe mosquitoes from Asia, has brought West Nile, Zika, dengue fever to the county of Orange. And so it's important for us to watch for standing water. The weather's getting warmer. Everybody says, in the rainy season, the mosquitoes aren't active during the rainy season. It's as we warm up. And so this water that is standing now as we get into the warmer weather, so we want to get ahead of that. So watch for your buckets that are turned over, caps that are turned over, flowers that have too big of buds on it. So those are the kind of things you want to look for. And I have nothing further. Thank you guys all for attending tonight, and I hope you had a great Easter and have a great week.